Emily was always a woman of unshakable faith. Since becoming a mother, her life revolved around raising her children in the ways of the Lord. Every Sunday, without fail, she would take her eldest son, Jack, to church. From a young age, Jack was a loving, obedient boy, full of curiosity about the things of God. He actively participated in Sunday school, could recite Bible verses by heart, and always prayed before going to bed. Emily was certain that her son was destined for great things in God's kingdom. However, as the years went by and Jack grew older, his priorities began to change. Adolescence brought new challenges. The friendships that were once centered around the church were gradually replaced by those who cared little about faith. Jack began to show interest in parties, where the focus was not on communion with God, but on the pursuit of temporary and fleeting pleasures. Emily watched with sadness as her son transformed. The boy who once had a heart dedicated to God was now drifting further away from the church and, consequently, from his faith. The nights he spent praying and reading the Bible were replaced by late hours at parties, filled with alcohol and, eventually, drugs. The light in Jack's eyes, which once reflected the presence of God, now seemed dimmed, replaced by a concerning emptiness. Desperate and not knowing what else to do, Emily sought advice from church leaders. They encouraged her to keep praying for her son and to never give up on him. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22 verse 6, they said. But Emily felt she needed to do more. She knew that the battle for Jack was not only physical but spiritual. And so, she decided to resort to a powerful weapon that God had placed in her hands: fasting. With a heavy heart, Emily began a 21-day fast, dedicating herself entirely to praying for her son. During this time, she not only asked God to bring Jack back, but fervently pleaded for divine intervention. She knew that if God did not act, she could lose her son forever. While Emily prayed and fasted with fervor, Jack was sinking deeper into his self-destructive lifestyle. On a particularly dangerous night, he went to a party that promised to be the biggest of the year. The loud music, flashing lights, and the strong smell of alcohol and drugs in the air, all of it drew him in more than anything he had ever experienced at church. Jack was determined to give himself over completely to that world. But that same night, while Jack was indulging in drugs, Emily was at home, kneeling by her bed, tears streaming down her face. Her prayers were a desperate cry to the Lord. "Lord, please save my son. Don't let him perish on this path. I trust in you. I trust in your power to transform him." She recalled the words of James, "Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded." James 4 verse 8. This was exactly what she was asking for Jack: a purified heart and a transformed life. At the height of the party, just as Jack was about to take another dose of drugs, something unexpected happened. A person he barely knew approached him. It was someone Jack had never noticed before, but his words struck like lightning. "Jack, what are you doing here? You don't belong in this place. This is your last chance. If you continue down this path, you won't make it out alive." Those words pierced Jack's soul in a way he couldn't explain. It was as if something within him woke up, a distant reminder of who he was and what he had forgotten. In that moment, he felt the weight of the choices he was making and how close he was to losing everything. Jack left the party in a hurry, his heart racing. He knew he needed to go home. When he arrived, he found his mother still kneeling, fresh tear marks on her face. Upon seeing her, he began to cry uncontrollably. "Mom, God gave me a second chance. I want to come back to him." Emily, hearing these words, felt an indescribable joy. She knew that God had answered her prayers and that fasting and prayer had broken the chains that were binding her son. But the Lord is faithful, and he will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 3. Those words had never been more real to Emily than in that moment. From that day on, Jack returned to church, reconciled with God, and became a living testimony to the power of fasting and prayer. He understood that this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Matthew 17 verse 21. The story of Emily and Jack teaches us that fasting and prayer are powerful weapons in the hands of a Christian. When everything seems lost and human strength is no longer enough, it is in the presence of God that we find true strength. Emily did not give up on her son, even when the situation seemed hopeless. She placed her son in God's hands and trusted in the transformative power of fasting and prayer. Like Emily, we must remember that no matter how far someone may seem from God, it is never too late for a miracle. God is capable of reaching even the hardest of hearts and bringing back those who are lost. As the Word says, this is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. 1 John 5 verse 14. Therefore, never underestimate the power of prayer. God listens to the cries of His children and can transform any situation, no matter how impossible it may seem. And remember, call on me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you will honor me. Psalm 50 verse 15.